Have you ever heard something that just didn't belong? A misplaced sound, a strange echo, something that weaves its way into your normal life and refuses to leave? For me, it was a lullaby. Not the lullaby I sing to my daughter, not the gentle lullaby I once heard from my mother, but a lullaby that echoed from my neighbor's basement. Welcome to Family Secrets Unveiled, where we dig deep into mysterious stories and find the truth behind closed doors. The story I'm about to tell you today is not a fairy tale, but a nightmare I lived through. My name is Maya. I was once a girl with an ordinary life, dreaming of a happy family and a peaceful little house. And I found it, or at least I thought I did. After marrying Jack, a caring and successful man, we bought a small house in a quiet suburb. The house had a pretty little garden, a white fence, and friendly neighbors. Among them were Mr. and Mrs. Miller, a kind, elderly couple living right next door. We often exchanged pleasantries, and they seemed to be the picture of a fulfilled couple who had lived their lives together. Mr. Miller was always sipping a hot cup of tea on his porch, while Mrs. Miller was always busy in her garden. Our lives were so peaceful that I thought nothing could break it. But then I started hearing those sounds. At first, it was just a faint, ethereal echo, mixed with the sound of lawnmowers and birds chirping. I thought it was just a distant sound. Until one night, when I woke up thirsty, I heard it more clearly. A lullaby. A simple, repetitive melody coming from the basement of the Miller's house. My heart pounded. Who was in that basement? Why were they singing a lullaby in the middle of the night? The next morning, I asked Jack about it, but he just laughed and told me I was imagining things. Maybe Mrs. Miller just forgot to turn off her radio, honey, he said with a reassuring smile. Don't worry too much. But I knew it wasn't a radio. The lullaby was full of emotion, almost palpable with pain and despair. It wasn't a recording. The next few nights, the lullaby continued. It began to haunt me, creeping into my sleep and my waking thoughts. Every time I looked over at the Miller's house, I wondered, what was in that basement? A child? But I had never seen a child at their house, nor had I ever seen Mrs. Miller buy baby clothes. They lived alone. My curiosity turned into fear. I started noticing small details. Mrs. Miller would occasionally bring out old blankets and small clothes to hang out to dry, items that didn't seem to belong to an adult. And her face, though always smiling, held a deep sadness in her eyes, a weariness I had never seen in anyone else. One afternoon, I saw Mr. Miller taking out the trash. He carried a large, sealed, and heavy black trash bag. When he put it down, a corner of the bag tore, and I caught a glimpse of a plastic baby bottle inside. My heart seemed to stop. A chilling sensation ran down my spine. What were they hiding? I tried to find information about the Millers online, but there was nothing unusual. They were an ordinary, retired couple, living a quiet life. That made the story even more terrifying. Their normalcy concealed a gruesome secret. The lullaby, the baby bottle, and Mrs. Miller's sad eyes all formed a puzzle I couldn't help but try to solve. I knew that if I wanted to sleep peacefully again, I had to find out what was happening in that house. I started a small investigation of my own. Whenever Jack was at work, I would walk around the garden, trying to peek into the Miller's basement through the cracks in the windows. But the windows were always covered with a thick curtain. I tried asking Mrs. Miller about her grandchildren, but she just smiled and said they didn't have any yet. That concealment made me even more suspicious. The lullaby wasn't a figment of my imagination. It was real. And it was telling a story. A story about a child who had been hidden away. The deeper I dug, the more I realized that I was getting involved in a world I didn't know, a world where peace was just a facade. The lullaby was no longer just a sound, it was a cry for help. And it was calling to me. When the lullaby from the Miller's basement became an indispensable part of my every night, fear gave way to determination. I couldn't just live like a naive lamb, turning a blind eye to such a dark secret. Jack still thought I was being paranoid, and his indifference only made me feel more alone in this fight. I started to observe the Millers more carefully. I noticed that they had a very strict schedule. Every morning, Mr. Miller would go out to shop, but he never went too far. He always returned home in less than an hour. And Mrs. Miller, she seemed to never leave the house. Once, I tried to get closer to their house to listen, but Mr. Miller spotted me and immediately closed the window with a displeased look. Their usual kindness seemed to be just a mask. On a stormy night, when the wind and thunder were raging, the lullaby from the basement seemed to be drowned out. That was my only chance. I woke Jack up and told him I had to go in there to see what was happening. "You're crazy, Maya," he said with a tired face. "Just leave them alone. Their business isn't our business." His words were like a bucket of cold water on me. Couldn't he see something was wrong? Or did he also know something but didn't want to say? Jack's coldness pushed me to desperation. I decided I would do it myself. When Jack was fast asleep, I put on a raincoat, grabbed a small flashlight, and went outside. I climbed over the low fence, hugged the wall, and approached the basement window. The thick curtain covered it, but a small corner was slightly ajar. I peeked inside. The room was pitch black, with only the weak light of a single candle flickering. And then I saw it. A small, old cradle, placed in the middle of the room. Beside it, there was a young woman. She wasn't Mrs. Miller. She was very thin, with tangled hair, holding a tattered rag doll and singing a lullaby. That lullaby. It was coming from her. Her face was full of fear and emptiness. And I realized. It wasn't a child. It was a woman, but her mind had been so severely damaged that she thought she was a child. A chilling horror swept over me. What had happened to her? Why was she being held captive here? And the Millers, who were they? Just then, a hand was placed on my shoulder. I turned around and saw Mr. Miller. His eyes were no longer kind as I usually saw them. They were empty, soulless, and full of warning. "You shouldn't be here, Maya," he said in a low but threatening voice. "Don't get involved in our business, or you'll regret it." I ran back to my house, my heart pounding like a drum. I had seen the truth. But that truth was even more terrifying than I had imagined. I couldn't tell Jack. He wouldn't believe me. He would think I was crazy. I was all alone, facing a brutal secret. But that wasn't all. The next day, as I was walking, I found a small box thrown into the bushes. It was a child's toy box. Inside, I found a diary. It was wet and old, but the words inside were still clear. I trembled as I turned each page. The diary belonged to a girl named Sarah. She wrote about an unhappy life, about a cruel stepmother, and a father who always looked the other way. She wrote about an old man who promised to give her a better life, a man with a kind appearance. It was Mr. Miller. But then, the story turned dark. Sarah wrote about being taken to a secluded house, being held captive in the basement, and being forced to take care of a child. She described that the child was not a baby, but another young woman. I looked back at the old cradle in the dark room. Maybe there was more than one person down there. The Miller's secret was not just about one captive woman, but about a more brutal network. A crime that had been concealed for many years. I realized that I was no longer a spectator. I was a part of this story, a witness who couldn't turn away. I had to find out what happened to Sarah and who the woman in the basement was. I felt like I was walking on a thin tightrope. Every step could lead to the truth or fall into the abyss. Sarah's diary became the key for me to open the door to a brutal world I had never thought of. The soaked diary pages told of her despair, her failed escape attempts, and her extreme fear of the Millers. But the most terrifying thing was the last lines. "They will never let me go. I'm just a fragment in their collection. The child will never grow up. She will forever be a child in their family." I found the identity of the woman in the basement through Sarah's descriptions. Her name was Lily. She had been abducted many years ago. Her family had searched for her everywhere, but without success. The Millers were not a kind couple, but professional kidnappers, turning young women into children held captive in the basement. They had erased the identities, pasts, and futures of their victims. I couldn't stay silent. I tried to contact the police, but there was no specific evidence. "You saw it through a small crack, and you have an old diary?" the police officer asked with a skeptical look. "I'm sorry, but that's not enough for us to raid the house of a respectable elderly couple." I felt like I was running into a brick wall. The legal system I trusted couldn't help me. I knew I had to handle this myself. I went back to the Miller's house, this time not to snoop, but to confront them. When I walked into the garden, I saw Mrs. Miller watering the plants. She looked up, her eyes empty and full of fear. "Don't do it. You'll make them find out," she whispered, her voice trembling. I realized. Mrs. Miller was not an accomplice. She was also a victim. A sudden twist in the situation. She had been living in fear and was forced to cooperate with her husband to maintain this collection. The peaceful life she had created was just a facade to hide Mr. Miller's crimes. She handed me a small old key. "This will open the back door," she said. "Save Lily. Don't let her become a part of this house forever." I turned back when I saw Mr. Miller walking toward the house. I snuck into the garden, looking for the back door Mrs. Miller had told me about. I trembled as I put the key in. The door opened. Inside was a small, dirty room. And at the end of the room, there was a staircase leading down to the basement. I took each step down. The air was heavy and musty. The lullaby still echoed, but this time it was closer, clearer. Down there, I saw Mr. Miller. He was looking at Lily, the young woman holding the doll, with a crazy and possessive look in his eyes. He turned around and saw me. "What are you doing here, Maya?" he said, his voice cold. "Do you want to join our family?" There was no turning back. I had to confront him. "What did you do to those girls?" I asked, my voice trembling. "They were kidnapped. They were held captive." "What did you do to Sarah?" He laughed. "Sarah? She wouldn't listen. She wanted to escape. I had to teach her a lesson." Immediately, I understood. Sarah was killed. She had tried to escape and paid with her life. I felt a surge of anger welling up inside me. I rushed toward Lily, trying to grab her hand. But Mr. Miller was faster. He grabbed my arm and pushed me to the ground. "You can't take her," he roared. "She's my daughter. All of them are my daughters." A struggle ensued. I tried to fight back, but he was too strong. Just then, Mrs. Miller appeared. She was holding a garden shovel and hit Mr. Miller hard on the back. He fell motionless. She looked at me, her eyes full of despair. "Go," she said. "Save Lily." I grabbed Lily's hand and ran up the stairs, leaving the Millers in the basement. I brought Lily back to my house. She was trembling in my arms, still clutching the rag doll. I called the police. Finally, they believed me when they saw the living evidence right in front of them. The police arrived and searched the Millers' basement. They found old cradles, discarded toys, and other evidence of a horrific crime. Mr. Miller was arrested. Mrs. Miller was taken for psychiatric evaluation. Her life was ruined, not by her own faults, but by her fear and Mr. Miller's control. Lily was reunited with her family. She was still traumatized by what had happened, but her family promised to help her get through it. I went to visit her. She told me that, although she had lost a part of her life, she had found something more important. "I found hope," she said. "You gave me hope, Maya." My life also changed forever. I was no longer the ordinary Maya of the past. Jack apologized to me for not trusting me, but our relationship was not the same anymore. His indifference when I needed him the most had created an unhealable crack. I decided to live alone. But I have no regrets. I saved a life. I uncovered a horrific secret and brought justice to those who had been hurt. The lullaby of the basement no longer echoes on rainy nights. But it will always remain in my mind. It reminds me that sometimes the most terrifying things are not the monsters lurking in the dark, but the secrets hidden in the light. This story is not just about a secret. It's about courage, empathy, and truth. It's about daring to look into the darkness, even when it could destroy you. It's about realizing that normalcy can be a dangerous facade. And as I look at the houses around me, I wonder, how many more lullabies are echoing from other basements? How many more secrets are hidden behind closed doors? My story has ended, but the stories of others continue. And I hope, through stories like this, we will learn to listen. To listen to strange sounds. To listen to misplaced lullabies. To listen to cries for help. Our story for today ends here. If you found this story meaningful, Please subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories, and don't forget to turn on notifications to be notified as soon as we upload a new video. See you in the next episodes of Family Secrets Unveiled.